Today we're joined by Punya Chatterjee, who made the rounds on Apple News websites a couple weeks ago for being basically one of the only beacons of light in the otherwise dark landscape that is tvOS development with his creation of the app Dayview. Punya, welcome to the show.
That is a great introduction.
I think so too.
For those that aren't really familiar, can you kind of give us a rundown of what exactly Dayview is?
Sure. So Dayview is, I describe it as a personal dashboard. It's basically a way to get all of the information you need to plan out your day in a single glance on your TV. I thought it was a space that wasn't really taken advantage of on Apple TV. There are a couple dashboard-like apps up there, but most of them were kind of business-facing, so I wanted to make something just for regular people to use.
Awesome. And you've actually had to overcome a couple obstacles recently, such as getting the iCloud calendars to work in your app. Can you kind of tell us about those difficulties and what you had to do to overcome them?
Yeah, so the way that I implemented it now, it's still not the best way. And a couple of people have contacted me saying they've run into some minor issues with it. Because it is kind of like a workaround hacky way of it. So on iPhones and Macs, and I guess watches too, Apple has a framework called EventKit, which basically just gives developers pretty easy access to your calendar. That's the pop-up you see when it says, do you want to let this app access your events and reminders? And you just say yes, and then then the developer can just easily use that, and it stays in sync. But they don't have EventKit on tvOS. So while it was easy to put in Google Calendar because they have an open API for developers to use, I instead had to go for a workaround with iCloud. All iCloud calendars come in the standardized iCalendar format, and I had to go searching quite a bit to find a way to make my apps just be able to read iCalendar formats, which sounds like it would be pretty easy, but it's actually pretty annoying when it comes to recurring events because they don't give you a list of all of the events that happen in a recurrence. They give you the first instance of the first event and then this weird way of describing how it repeats with a lot of rules that often contradict. So I kind of put together something that works for, I'm guessing, 90% of cases for people's iCloud calendars, but it's getting that last 10% that's a challenge still.
It sounds like you kind of have to write your own iCal kit or something comparative to EventKit.
Basically, yeah. For the moment, I had to rely on. This was a big undertaking to take in. I really wanted to get iCloud calendars in within the update that I put in the first week, because that was the number one thing that people were asking me for. And the best I could do was there were already some iCalendar parsers written in JavaScript, and so I had to make this weird Frankenstein's monster bridged version of the JavaScript into my code, and then it parses it. And like I said, I'm trying to make it better for each update, but it's tricky.
Do you think some of these kind of just weird limitations that Apple puts on tvOS itself is why development for that platform has stagnated so much recently?
I definitely think they could be doing a little bit more. In terms of what's available, I can see reasons why they wouldn't include all frameworks on TV. My guess with EventKit is that the TV doesn't really have a strong sense of a single user, so it might not make sense to display a single user's events up there. It also might just be because they don't intend for people to make apps like this. UIKit is definitely the whole framework that they make for this. It's not meant to really get you to make interactive apps. It's more for presenting content apps, like most streaming apps on TV would be.
I was thinking a little bit about the the single user reason for Apple maybe not having done this, and But they make a HomePod which only links up to a single user as well, and that's very much a whole family device sitting in your living room or somewhere in the house. So I think it's a poor excuse for Apple not to have come up with something like this if a single user was the reasoning.
Yeah, and that has access to your events, right? I haven't actually used it for event purposes, but can it like check your calendar and stuff?
Yeah, so the HomePod can check your calendar, reminders, send messages, those sorts of things. As long as the iPhone that it's kind of paired to is in the same house or on the same Wi-Fi network, it'll do that.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess I mean I'm just guessing that their justification there is that a HomePod can be tied to like one particular paired iPhone, so that's enough of like a strong identification. But yeah, it might also just be because they felt like people making apps for TV wouldn't really have a need to do anything with your calendar, just because it's maybe not what they pictured the use case being.
What made you decide to even delve into the realm of tvOS development when it seems like most other developers have abandoned the platform at this point?
Well, I've always had an interest in Apple TV. I got one earlier this year and was just kind of really impressed by the user interface and just how everything was presented. I thought it was a much better device. Before that, I was using my PS4 for all of my media consumption, and it just like it just felt painful going back to that to use it. So I really wanted to make something with it, and I was already an iOS developer, so I had a strong like sense of their frameworks, and I didn't even realize until later on that like how similar tvOS development is, and so it was kind of just an experiment I did to see what I could do with it, especially since it seemed like there's so many powerful tools for it, but it's kind of an untapped space.
And so does this mean that Dayview is kind of more as a one-off app to test the feasibility of creating on tvOS, or is this something that you're intending to continue working on and updating for the foreseeable future?
I definitely do plan to keep updating it. At the moment, I actually didn't anticipate it taking off as much as it did. I originally put out the first version just kind of as a test, because I didn't want to do the whole test flight beta thing. I wanted to just kind of get it into the hands of people because, you know, I'm a college student. I know almost no one who owns an Apple TV, so it was really hard for me to get user testing in a meaningful sense, other than just, you know, asking my friends to come in and check it out and give me their feedback. So I put it out to kind of see what people wanted out of it, and now I've learned that yes, this is something that people seem to have a use for, and people always are coming to me with ideas for how to add to it, and I fully intend to carry through on it.
It seems like such, I don't know how you put, maybe low-hanging fruit of an idea that I can't believe that it's not like a massive kind of ecosystem of this already.
I agree.
And the way you've done it, kind of having widgets that you add and remove, is also such a good way of doing it. Do you think, is there any chance of creating like your own ecosystem around widgets that other people could even potentially add to your app, or is that just a completely unfeasible idea?
I have thought about that. That's like a really big like end goal for me. I actually have no idea at the moment how I would even implement such a thing with like other developers' code, but it's definitely something that I think could be a big potential like area for growth for this app. I think if this was something that a lot of people used, and people had a way to kind of tap into it, then that could be useful. A big inspiration for me on making this was the watch complications on an Apple Watch, and how third-party developers can add their own complications along with the big stock list that Apple provides.
So your app is not on your GitHub, so it's not an open source app that you're sharing?
No, not yet. Okay. At least not at the moment. I don't know if I'm going to open source it. The reason at the moment is I would really want to clean up my code. As you can imagine, it's a pretty complex thing for me to be doing myself. So right before each update, it gets a lot of like just do it, make it work. And then definitely have to go back and make it a lot more presentable. But yeah, I think maybe eventually I would open source it, but at the moment I just want to explore this as it is and just have this be mine.
Just the reason I brought that up is because it could function as some sort of very high-level app store if it was open-sourced, and then developers were just contributing their widgets, via code.
Yeah, that would be that would actually be a great way to implement it if that's what I wanted to do. I don't know. Like I said, this is still a project that's very much in its infancy, so I haven't made any nailed down plans for it yet.
Yeah, with this kind of overnight success of launching the app and then it being picked up by so many different news sources, was this at all what you were expecting?
No, not at all. I posted the app. So the App Store review process was remarkably fast for a tvOS app, because this is my first tvOS app that I had submitted, and normally if I submit an iOS app it'll like take a couple days, but it was like I posted it on a Friday evening and then I woke up Saturday morning and it was up, and I was like, okay, and so I knew Reddit, the Apple subreddit, and Apple has their own like self-promotion Saturday one, so I posted on there. I also posted on the Apple TV subreddit, which is really where it like took off, because a lot of people seem to really like the idea, and I got a lot of good feedback that way. And then the next morning I woke up and saw someone actually told me that it was on Mac Rumors, and I was like, no, you're joking. And then I went and checked. So
there's only one person working that tvOS approval queue, and they only get like one app a week. So I think that's the reason it went through so quickly.
Yeah, probably.
So do you have any plans in the near future for what's going to be coming to Dayview?
Yeah, this week I've actually been working pretty hard on it. Something that a lot of people have asked for is the ability to have multiple of the same widgets. Before you could only have one of each. So this like took a big amount of restructuring the underlying way the app stores your preferences. Just because before it was like there was one stocks app, so the stocks just needed to keep track of these 4 symbols, but now it's like you need to know where this stock goes and which stocks go with this widget and identify it. It's just a lot of under the hood changing that I had to do to make that work, but I think it'll be good for people, so they can have like a lot of news widgets or a lot of stocks widgets, for example, or multiple weather. And another one is I'm working on adding HomeKit. And I'm not sure yet exactly what I'll put into HomeKit integration, but I am planning on making that as my first in-app purchase for it.
That's a great idea. Yeah, a lot of people are going to love HomeKit integration.
Yeah, there was something that a lot of people have been asking for, and that's one that I feel like it would be okay for me to like kind of experiment with in-app purchases and see how it does, see if there's enough demand for it, and it'll give me a good idea of what I can do with the future of the app.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're in your last year of university at this point, is that correct?
Yes, I'm a senior at Stanford.
Right. So how are you trying to juggle schoolwork and also maintaining this ever-growing in popularity app?
It's been tough. I stay very busy, but it works out. It works out all in the end. I think just the last 3 years of grinding really hard has made me better at accepting that I'm not going to have much free time and just getting into the zone of working. And this year is, less pressure, as senior year always is for anyone. So I'm okay with, like sitting in a lecture and coding this app in the background because it's okay.
Well, you've been leveraging Reddit quite a bit, not only when your app first launched, but then to get kind of input on what features or updates users would be wanting to see. How's the community on a whole on Reddit especially responded to the Dayview app? Have they been mostly helpful in their suggestions?
Yeah, they've been amazingly helpful. I really didn't expect so much like positive feedback. It's really like all constructive feedback and just people wanting more features out of it, and it's been great. It's kind of it's given me like a good clear path of what I can do with the app. I obviously don't want to like spam on Reddit too much. I want to, my reason for posting about it there the first time and with the update was just because I feel like those are people who A, know about it, and B, would like maybe want to hear about it. But I do want to kind of find a better way of just talking about updates, maybe just making a Twitter or something.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, if it grows enough, consider making your own subreddit for like feature requests or bug reports or anything.
Yeah, I could do that.
I wouldn't worry too much about spamming the Apple TV subreddit because they're a little bit starved for posts there. Can I suggest a couple of features myself?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I think a portrait mode would be good because there are people who can use the Apple TV like... well, there's like a community that puts screens behind mirrors and all this sort of thing. So having portrait mode would be interesting.
I wonder, does the Apple TV itself, like the UI, support vertical or no?
I'd highly doubt it.
Yeah, I can't imagine it, but like I think that's a really interesting idea because it definitely could be helpful to people, but it would take a lot of refiguring out the UI. Mostly just the code behind it. I think figuring out the design of it would be pretty self-explanatory.
And in terms of actually using it day to day, so at the moment you do have to launch the app, don't you? There's no feature in the Apple TV where an app can act as a screensaver, is there?
Yeah, no, I wish. The most I can do in terms of making it a screensaver is as soon as the app goes on, or as soon as it launches, it just disables the idle timer. So basically, no screensaver will pop up while my app is up, and the app refreshes every half hour. So you could theoretically just use it as your screensaver, but it doesn't move, it doesn't really do much. And yeah, you do have to open it like an app. That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Just on that, do you have any worries about screen burn-in? I'm not sure what screen you're running it on, but there are some screens that would not enjoy having just the same app open for long periods of time.
Yeah, so I have an LED screen, so I don't really worry about that, but I have heard a couple people tell me about that. And I'm wondering, I actually am not sure how I would solve that just yet. I actually genuinely didn't know that burn-in was like still that much of a problem for a lot of people. I just didn't realize because I used to have a TV with burn-in. It was like an older plasma, but now I don't. So that's an interesting consideration.
Yeah, I think it's
actually
the plasmas
don't know how
that do it mostly. And
yeah,
the way that some of those, the big TV manufacturers get around of it when they have still images on the screen is that they just kind of bump it pixel by pixel, so like imperceptibly move whatever still images on the screen around a little bit.
Yeah, I'm wondering how I could do that. A possible idea is, the way that like everything on an Apple TV kind of like looks like it's 3D as you kind of pan over it. I could possibly just have it like if it's just been sitting for a minute without any interaction, I could just have it slowly 3D shift or something. I don't know. It would have to be like not off-putting to where it needs to still like maintain its look while doing that.
I think there's like a very small niche of people that's going to really affect.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like the community that could afford like a really big fancy TV 10 years ago and haven't upgraded yet, which there might be some people, but I don't know how many of those are investing in like 4K Apple TVs right now.
Yeah.
But then there's also this community of, I don't know, I consider them like TV snobs who say like plasma is still the best way to view content because of its like richer blacks.
I have not heard that. Interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh,
it's
yeah.
totally a thing.
Yeah.
It's like all the people who still like to listen to music on vinyl. They're just like, yeah.
Man, the blacks in CRT, that's where it's at. Forget plasma.
Yeah, no, but it's really interesting. Like things like that are just considerations that I just could not have made by doing any amount of user testing here locally. So I'm really glad it's gotten out to so many people, so I can learn how people are using it and where the shortcomings are.
And is like going on past graduation, looking a little farther ahead, is this something you want to do full time, like develop apps on your own? Are you hoping to potentially return to Apple at some point?
Well, yeah, I am looking to return to Apple, but I don't know. I don't know, obviously, like what the long-term future holds for me. I don't know if I would want to rely on independent development for a very long time, and if I ever did start working somewhere where I couldn't work on something, where I couldn't work on this app off to the side, then I would make it free and make it open source. Just so that it could continue on.
Yeah, speaking of that exact situation, we had Christian Selig on a few episodes ago. He's the creator of the Apollo Reddit client, if you're familiar with
it. Yeah. I was listening to it.
Oh, great. And he mentioned to us some of Apple's strict rules about not being able to develop apps on the side if you're working for them. And I was curious how you'd want to juggle that or what you would do in that situation.
Yeah, so in that situation, I know Apple's policy is just that you can't develop apps on the side, or at least you can't publish them. You can make them for yourself, but what's the point then? But yeah, given that, if that was what ended up happening, then I would, like I said, make the app free. Like if there are in-app purchases, remove the in-app purchases, and then probably make it open source, because I wouldn't want the whole project to just go away, especially if it's something that's gained traction and it's something that people want.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but that said, there's still like a whole year for that, so there's still a lot I can do with this.
So, and I know you can't talk a lot about your time at Apple, but it sounds like you worked on some pretty exciting stuff during your internship there last summer. What can you tell us about your experience?
So not a lot, obviously. I worked for, so I majored in computer science, and I interned as a software engineering intern with accounts and authentication. And it was a good time. I had a really good time, like especially just the people I got to work with, and it was a good experience overall. I got to make a minor feature that will possibly be in a future iOS, like a very minor feature. Like you guys wouldn't notice it, but I'm gonna keep looking at the updates. Like, oh, is it there? But yeah, so that was good. Great learning experience. I was lucky enough to work at Apple Park.
Awesome.
Which was great because it was still while people were moving in. That was a really fun experience. I will say that building is the least intuitive building I've ever been in. Like every door made me feel so stupid because I didn't know which way to pull it or if you had to unlock it or not. It's a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
They didn't have Johnny Ive design every door in the building.
No, that's exactly what I did.
No. Yeah, I don't know. It definitely, like the first week, I really felt so stupid because it's really hard to tell which way you're supposed to use it, and some doors look like you're supposed to unlock them, some look like you don't have to unlock them, but then you just do the opposite, and everyone looks at you like, oh, are you new here? And I'm like, yes.
It's a way of creating a sense of community.
Yeah.
Community around doors.
You're not pulling it right.
Yeah. But overall,
So,
good time
were there
in
any-
my internship, yeah.
What was it like to be at Apple during a WWDC event? Was there any kind of celebration going on?
Oh, I wish I joined before WWDC happened. I joined like actually the week after. It really sucked because I joined the week after WWDC and left the week before their September special event. And I really wanted to be around for either of those just to see what the mood was like then, but I couldn't. Yeah, that's just a function of when Stanford has weird times when they start and stop. So
Okay.
And you also interned at Intel, so how's that in comparison as an experience?
Oh yeah, yeah. Intel was not. It was a good time overall. Like it was my first internship that I had right after my freshman year, and it definitely gave me a lot that I needed to learn in terms of working in an engineering company in a real role, like going to work and doing all of that. But what I did there particularly, I don't think it's really something that had much of a bearing on what I ended up doing with the rest of my career or with my CS major even.
So I kind of want to go off on a little bit of a tangent, a side path here.
Sure.
I just discovered this earlier today that you've been creating YouTube videos under the channel Geek Slayer
Yes.
for the better part of the last decade. And you've gained
Yeah.
a following of over 80,000 subscribers.
Yeah, that has been one of my original passions. It's actually part of why I also am just interested in Apple TV because I've always been like a video guy. Like people who know me as, oh, he's that tech video guy. Um, but yeah, that's been something that's been a lot of fun. I used to have a lot more time for it, but after I started college, I just really did not get time. I was able to finally put out a video in this last month, which was great, and but all of the comments that came in were like, "Oh, where have you been? It's been a whole year." So
How did you get it started with a channel like that and growing it to such a big size?
well, so I started it in seventh grade, hence
Wow.
the name Geek Slayer. I started it just because that was honestly like that time. I guess it was 2010. That was like like the Renaissance period, quote unquote, for YouTube. That was when all of these content creators were like becoming like YouTube famous, and there were a lot of people like that were just regular people just making videos in their bedrooms and becoming famous and like making thousands of people laugh, and it was something I really liked. I've always really liked comedy. I've liked acting. And so I started making parodies of popular songs. My first one was a parody of TikTok by Kesha. Um, and that one actually is what made me take off. And I made a lot of videos about just about Indians because I felt like there weren't a lot of like obviously there aren't a lot of Indian Americans in media in general, but I also felt like people wanted to see jokes about the way they grew up, and so I was making jokes about the way I grew up, and a lot of people really resonated with that. So I think that contributed to a good following for me.
Were you born in India and then moved to the States?
No, I was born in Austin, Texas. Actually, just born to Indian parents. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
How long does it take to put together one of your parody YouTube videos? I did have a look through a few, and the quality is quite good.
Depends on, it depends on the video. Normally, it comes in bursts. Like I'll be dormant and not thinking about or working on videos at all for a while, and then something will just like switch in me and be like, oh no, now I really should make a video now, and then I like for the next week I just like focus in, and then it gets done in a week. Over time, I've gotten used to shooting videos very quickly because all of the people who appear in my videos and who help me with my videos have always just been friends who volunteer, and it's hard to get people to actually commit time to you for free, especially if it's them helping you advance something of your own. So I got used to shooting things very quickly and very efficiently, and I think that made me a better filmmaker overall.
And I saw in your latest video that you've got a couple shots. What looks like you at Infinite Loop. Is that where you are?
Yeah, I went down to Infinite Loop.
Did you film
was
that
fun.
during your internship, or did you just drive down to get
No,
those shots?
no. I would not have done that during my internship. Oh yeah, but no, that was actually like the day before the video came out. I went and shot that, but yeah, it was pretty funny to do that because there were like security people around. But my girlfriend and I just went down there, and then and we were shooting with this big old rig, and we were like, just get the shot fast, do it, and then just run out.
Did you have any run-ins with security during your time there?
No.
Like, no, I used to work here.
No. Luckily, no. But I would have.
Flash the expired
probably.
ID card.
Yeah, I would have. Oh, I wish they didn't let me keep my ID card after I left. I really wanted to keep it. Makes sense because then people would do things like exactly what you described.
As well as videography, you're into a bit of photography, is that right?
Yeah. That's more of like just a little bit of like a side hobby, but yeah, I do that a little bit.
And specifically film photography?
I have done a little bit of film photography. I only did film photography for a class, and I had a great time doing that. But the problem is it's so hard to find a lab to actually develop photos yourself. So I kind of just never got a chance to after I lost access to the university lab.
Okay, so you're actually doing the development, so you're after like a community darkroom or something like that?
Yeah.
And what cameras were you shooting on?
It was a... Oh, I cannot remember. It was a Nikon. It was an old Nikon F something. I couldn't.
Those old Nikon film cameras, yeah, they're really nice.
Yeah. It was like one of the original, like really famous Nikon film ones.
And speaking of kind of school projects, I found your big YouTube channel accidentally. I had initially found a few weeks ago your YouTube channel just under your name that has all of 3 videos on it. It looks like they were all made for school projects.
I actually did not realize what are those videos.
The most recent one is a Solus concept video. Solus, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Oh yeah, that was okay. I guess that one's not that old. That one is we have this class here called CS 147. It's the intro to human computer interaction. It's like a UI user experience design class, and my project for that was called Solace. Not the best name, but it was a group project we worked on. It was the whole concept of the class was basically you just make an app from like doing the need finding steps with people to making like a high fidelity prototype app for it, including making like a concept video to show other people. So we made that app, and it was mostly just to like show you where your friends are and what to do, but it was like conceptually a little misguided because Snapchat put out a feature that was almost exactly like it the same month. Their little heat map thing with like everyone's pictures on your map, that feature. So, but it was a good experience.
So yeah, I was taking a look at those videos, and the only comments underneath those are people saying, "I found you" and "Geek Slayer." And I was like, what does this mean? And so I Googled it and found your big channel.
That is really funny. I actually thank you for pointing that out, that those are public, because I did not realize that.
No, they're great videos. You should leave them up.
Thank you. I might keep that Solace one up, but yeah, the other ones, I don't know. What are the other ones again? Like
Crime and Punishment is on there.
And then, yeah, that was a short film a couple of my friends and I made for a South by Southwest film competition, and we won, so that was good.
Oh wow, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, and then your final one is the Stanford Bangra promo.
And I also didn't know that was public. Yeah, that was for a very brief time, like only my first quarter at Stanford. I joined an Indian dance group called Stanford Bhangra, and it was too much for me. It was very rigorous. I can't move like that. I'm not. That's not me. But I left the group, but I overall had like a good time with them. And later on, they asked me to like film their promo video, and so did that for them.
I could link to these in the show notes, but I suspect they're not long for the public sphere.
It's fine. I'll leave them up.
Seems like people are finding you anyway.
Yeah.
And just to try and catch you off guard, du kannst auch Deutsch sprechen, oder?
Ja, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, aber nicht so gut.
How is it that you speak a bit of German?
Yeah, I took a year of German in sophomore year and just to fulfill the language requirement, and that's as far as I got.
Well, you guys both lost me already, so that's good. And on top of, I mean, it seems like you're just such a well-rounded, cultured individual. Besides software and videography and your photography and being multilingual, you're also into like sketch comedy.
Yeah. That's another like big thing that I do here is I'm in a sketch comedy group called Robert Barron's Sketch Comedy. Go look us up because not enough people do. That's been fun because I've always done sketch comedy on my YouTube channel, but when I joined Stanford, I wanted to do something like I wanted to just join some kind of club that fit that interest of mine, and somewhere where I could also be useful. And so I joined Robert Barron's Sketch Comedy. We're the only sketch comedy group on campus. And that's been one of the most like fun things that I've done at Stanford. It's we put on a show every quarter. We just go to a lecture hall and get a big rowdy group of people to come out and watch the show, and it's always been a good time. And I make the videos for them too. We make a couple of videos per quarter.
Yeah, I don't know how you manage to juggle so many activities in your life. That's incredible.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's good for me how much I do, but yeah.
And then kind of to take this full circle again, get back to development, just touching briefly on some of your other apps, such as RhymePad. Are those still apps that you're still working on, or are things like Oddity and Headout kind of just past projects?
Yeah, so Oddity and Headout were both apps that I made kind of with the purpose of just learning something. So I'm not sure if I would go forward with doing something more with those apps in particular. RhymePad is something that I am really interested in. That was my first like real... It was actually my first app that I put out on the App Store, but it didn't look anything like the one right now does, and it didn't do like nearly like a fraction of what it does now either. It used to just be like a notes app for songs, and then I added in like a lot of features for like finding music and adding instrumentals and recording and all of that stuff, kind of to make it like an all-in-one package for people who make music, particularly hip-hop, since that's something I'm really, really interested in. But it hasn't really taken off very well. And as much as I would like to continue developing it, if there's demand for it, I think it's at an okay stage right now, and I'm kind of like trying to keep my focus on debut.
All right. So yeah, it seems like not only looking at this app, but your YouTube videos as well, it seems like rap and hip hop's kind of a big inspiration for you.
Yeah. It's my favorite genre of music. I listen to it a lot. My best friend Baron is a rapper who goes by Sun Kuma, and I live DJ for him and make his videos. So that's another big thing that I do on the side.
Man.
Yeah.
What do you use to DJ with? You just have a MacBook, or you have special apps like on an iPad that you use? What's your setup?
My DJ setup is hilariously terrible. Last year or earlier this year, we were lucky enough to play a big show. Stanford does like a yearly, like end of the year concert where they invite some big artists, and they have student openers, and we were the student openers, and so it was like a much bigger crowd than we were used to. And for the first time, we were allowed to have a big video screen behind us. And so we spent so many hours making all of these crazy like 3D animations and stuff to put up on the screen. And our setup was two laptops, or two MacBook Pros and an iPad. One MacBook Pro was running Apple MainStage and getting Baron's mic input and putting auto-tune on it and then putting it back out to the system. Another laptop, I was running DJ Pro just for the videos though, so I could switch between two videos and crossfade between them, and that was hooked up with an HDMI to the big screen, and then an iPad, which was playing the beats. Which was weird because whenever a new song would start, I would have to, like, he would speak in between songs, so I would have to, on the first laptop, change the auto-tune key to the next song, and then play the video at the same time as I'm tapping on the iPad, and it was just not great. We're going to do something better next time.
As kind of one of the only active developers, or at least it's getting headlines in the tvOS kind of landscape, I'm going to just from here on out refer to you as an authority on the platform. So would you recommend this platform for someone who's trying to like get into one of their first development projects, or would you suggest like maybe learning the ins and outs of just Xcode with iOS first? Or what are your thoughts on the tvOS platform as a whole?
I wouldn't recommend tvOS as like a first app, only because of how few people develop for it. And so at least a big part of my coding process, and it is for a lot of other developers, is like, I can't do this thing, go search Google for it until I find a bunch of examples of how people did it. And that's not very possible with tvOS because there's just so few people developing for tvOS that it's hard to get that support just already there online. So for that reason, I think it's just easier to get into iOS just because all of the questions you could ask have probably already been answered. But sure. Other than that, there's no specific reason why it would be harder to develop for tvOS. There's actually two sides to tvOS development. One is with UIKit, which is like the same process as you would if you're developing an iOS app. And then the other side of it is developing with tvML, which is Apple's own way of you basically make these HTML-like layout pages and then patch it together with JavaScript. That's kind of what they made to evangelize the platform for non-iOS developers. So I would say like more people definitely should get into TV development, and a big reason why I made this app too was just to show that apps don't have to be very like cookie cutter, and they can do a lot.
Why do you think it is that there aren't more developers on the platform? Is it because the users just aren't there for any sort of return?
I think that's probably a big reason for it. And, most people, it actually matters if they have a return on investment. So they probably wouldn't get much of a return if they had like real paid engineers working on a dedicated Apple TV app only for it to not get that many users. Whereas for me, I made this as something that I really wanted to exist. And now that I see that people will use it and people have been telling me they want to pay for it, and for me, I'm like, okay, cool. Like that's great. Like to get a little bit of extra support while I do this, but I'm still going to do it. So I think that's why, just the return on investment.
So you don't think this is necessarily any fault of Apple's themselves that the tvOS platform isn't taking off, and it's more of just a user issue?
I don't think it's Apple's fault, honestly. I think they've done a lot to give people the tools. Like I think it's a shame how powerful UIKit or just how everything is on tvOS and how few people use it. I think they've done a great job of like giving people all of the frameworks. Like obviously like EventKit is like an exception, but who knows what their reason is for that. Other than that, I think it's a really powerful tool that's just underused.
Well, James, do you have any more questions before we move on to a post-discussion?
I was wondering, are there any big widgets coming to debut that you haven't told anyone about that you can reveal to us now?
Well, I keep a big running list on my phone, so let me see if there's anything I'm down to talk about that I haven't already. Let's see. I'm gonna in the future definitely look into doing something more with social widgets. Like the Twitter widget that I have right now is kind of just a proof of concept. It just shows trends, but people have asked for showing different users or searching for a keyword. I'm probably gonna integrate those. And I actually didn't realize that Instagram had an API now. They didn't, or at least I thought they didn't when I started working on it. But someone brought to my attention that now they do. So I could probably make an Instagram widget. Reddit's API is very open, as I'm sure you've heard from Christian before. But yeah, those would probably also be something that I would release as a widget pack. That's kind of my plan. I don't think a lot of people would use this app in the same way, so I think there could be a lot of value from just offering different widget packs to people who want to pay individually for them.
I've got a free idea for you. You could make one of the wallpaper options a grid of someone's Instagram feed.
Oh, interesting. That could be cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's actually another thing I plan on adding is support for adding your own photos as a background. Yeah, but nice. That one's also like a little bit of an engineering challenge. I mean, not even really a challenge. It's just something I got to do. There's no easy like photo browser for the TV like there is for iOS. So I gotta just make that. But other than that, that should be pretty straightforward in a future release.
And is that going to be along the lines of actually you're creating your own photo picker view, or are you going to be forced more into a corner where you have to like put a URL of an image, kind of like
no. That's they have the PhotoKit framework is what they use to give developers access to photos, and they have pretty much a full PhotoKit on tvOS.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, that's why there is a Photos app on your Apple TV by default, because they have that framework.
Okay. Well, before we let you go, we thought we'd have you join us in what we usually do on this podcast, which is discussing the top posts on the Apple subreddit from the last couple of weeks. We're only going to look at one today. It's a post by You, The Return of Jagger, and it's actually linked to a 9to5Mac article about Mark Zuckerberg forcing all of the Facebook executives to switch to Android after being infuriated by a comment Tim Hook made.
Okay, I did hear about that. I definitely saw the headline. I don't know if I read the post.
Well, it seems to be in response to an interview Tim gave a little while back, where he stated that Apple doesn't profit off of their customers' personal life and that privacy is a human right. And when he was asked specifically what Apple would do if they were in Facebook's position involving some of their recent security scandals, he just said, "I wouldn't be in this situation." And apparently that was enough to really upset Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. You know what? I'm not at all surprised that they would be upset by that. Especially, I remember, I guess it was during WWDC when Craig Federighi was talking about the new privacy additions to Safari, and they pretty much directly called out Facebook for tracking. Yeah, so It makes sense, but I'm sure there's plenty of Facebook employees who don't care about that rule. I don't even know if it is a rule. Is it just like a recommendation they make?
Well, it seems that he's forced his entire executive team to switch to Android. It doesn't seem like it's a rule.
I see, okay.
But yeah, it's just definitely required to do it. Yeah, compared to Apple's legendary security, which you've experienced a little bit firsthand, at least in person now, but also just their general stance on security and privacy, like when they stood up to the FBI, was that 4 or 5 years ago now, but even moving on with their effort to always keep user information on device in a secure enclave, and even with their most recent attempts to thwart, I wouldn't say they're trying to thwart police, but maybe people who are trying to maliciously hack iPhones by disabling the USB port from some of these gray box crackers that have been coming out recently. It seems like Apple's only doubling down on their security stance, and that's, I think, one of the big reasons that they have such a large following, even into the era now where all their prices are going up by about 20% this year.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that they do that, because I don't think there's, I don't know, I generally don't think that Google or Facebook are doing the right thing with their approach to it, but I see that their whole business model has been built on it, so it necessitates them doing whatever they need to. So
Sure. And even, I don't want to say Facebook is malicious, but maybe even looking at kind of a less malicious use of user data in a company like Google and their Android OS. I mean, everyone already knows that your personal information isn't always necessarily being sold, but it's always being used to market more specifically to you, or to tune your device or your personal assistant or anything else to fit your needs a little better than something like Siri does, where it's 100% private. I don't know, between those two approaches, what do you think is maybe the best one, or is there a middle ground that maybe both Apple and Google could be striving for?
Well, I'm definitely no expert on this, so I'm not sure about it. But my personal opinion is, I think there is a middle ground that could be reached. I think it would start with making users just more aware of what data is collected, when and how, just so that people have an actual visualization. Because I think people get a little scared too about their data usage because they don't understand it. Like oh no, like they have like yes, theoretically Google and Facebook could make like really crazy assumptions about you based on the data they have on you. But if there was some way for the population to understand what's actually being collected, for there to be real transparency there, then I think that is the best approach. But in the absence of that transparency, I think what Apple's doing is the right thing, which is just having an only like localized on-device, like only need to know basis kind of information gathering.
All right, James, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just back on that article briefly. One of the top comments, the Reddit user _not wrong, just asshole. He actually notes that Zuckerberg was mad at Tim Cook's comments, and he also told his managers to switch to Android, but the two are not related topics at all. So in reality, he says Facebook was doing a shitty job on Android, so they were told to switch to Android in order to improve the focus.
That makes sense. I mean, a big part of testing the device is actually living on the device and using it so you can see it.
Sure. Yeah, well, that changes the tone of this whole thing.
It was still a good discussion. I didn't want to bring that up just to kill it.
Well, Punya, thanks for joining us. It's been great to have you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So we look forward to seeing what you do in the future, and definitely wish you the best of luck with finishing up your final year at university and then beyond that. So I'm Jellywoot on Reddit and Twitter.
I'm James VDM on Reddit and Twitter.
I'm Punya.
All right. If you're interested... Everywhere. Yeah. If you're interested in supporting the show, we have a Patreon at patreon.com/TheR Apple Show.